Somebody mentioned they couldn't hear very well earlier. If you'd like to come sit down front, there's a seat down here if you'd like to get closer to the sound. Who was it who couldn't hear earlier? Come on down. Come on, here's your moment. Come on down. Well, it's difficult to do that, so if you can't hear, perhaps if you move down it might be easier. You can hear me, because I'm temporarily projecting, but it's always easier to do that. Just wondered if we could do an experimenting thing, if that's all right.
Tell me what the experiment is.
How long can you hold that pose for? No, I just wondered if, and we'd be very controlled in doing this, and I might try and sort of cut people off if they talk too much. Sounds a good start, doesn't it? But if, what about if some people throw out what their book is, what genre it is quickly, what the title is roughly, in 2 seconds, literally a nanosecond, what it's about. And if you could say, well, obviously you don't know the project intimately, but you could say, this sounds like the sort of publisher that might appeal to, just that sense of what you might do very quickly. But we're not going to hold you to it. It's not going to be, sort of pristine advice or anything, but just a little play around with that.
Yeah, that's fine. I did an event once called Slush Pile Live.
Hysterical.
Beforehand, I was all like, oh, I can't do this, I'm too nice, I'm going to be like the Talisa of the panel. I was Simon Cowell. I was really mean. I kept saying stuff and being like, God, that was brutal. So I won't do that now.
They do. We like brutal. Everyone likes that. Okay, so come on, somebody. Who's going to volunteer? I think you get it for the eyebrows alone. That was amazing.
Me?
Yeah.
Eyebrows?
Yeah, they shot up. Come on, you're wasting your time.
Sorry. Literary fiction, called Lazarus 5, 1934. Guy brings a dog back from the dead. Ruins his academic career, subsequently gets to operate on death row prisoners.
So, you say literary fiction. I would say that's kind of, it's got slightly fantastical elements in.
No, it's based on a true story.
Someone who brought a dog back. Well, yeah, right, okay, literary fiction still sells. It sounds like it has a good, very different hook.
It's very much about should he do what he has been asked to do or shouldn't he, and it's the experience. There's a lot going on. It involves a lot of movies. It involves some pretty nasty crimes because of the death row guy. Involves an insight into capital punishment, but it also involves very much the theme of it is redemption.
Yeah,
whose redemption is left a rather open question.
It sounds really interesting. Publishers still absolutely look for literary fiction, prize-winning fiction, which has lots of big ideas. It's important, I think, with literary fiction to have something which has those kind of ideas and themes running through it, because often the rejection you get as an agent is it's just a bit too quiet. The writing's really good, but it's a bit quiet, and that doesn't sound quiet. So lots of publishers still do that kind of thing well. You've obviously got the traditional places like kind of Canongate and Faber who love their literary fiction, but more and more mainstream publishers are setting up lists like Headline, set up a list called Tinder Press, which is dedicated to that kind of literary ideas-y fiction, and so it has a big market.
I think we're all intrigued as well.
Yeah.
So a young lady came up to me in the break and said, are we pitching tonight? And I said, no, but I'm saying yes. Do you want to have a quick go?
She did. She pitched
She
already.
did. Okay. Right. Excellent. Who else?
Non-fiction, putting the ear into learn and the play into playing the piano. It's supposed to be for musicians, or for the musician in all of us, what Betty Edwards did for the artist with drawing with the right side of the brain. That's the kind of idea. It's a book, but it's also supposed to be standalone with drawings and sounds, because it's about learning to play by ear. for people who don't like reading very much. But the target audience would be adults with time who want to play the piano, improve playing the piano.
I would say something like that is fairly specialist, so it's not necessarily something that an agent would necessarily represent. What I would suggest your best bet is going to kind of music presses and places like that, and lots of smaller specialist presses. They don't require you to have an agent at all, and they should give you submission guidelines for what exactly you should be sending them.
I also think a good idea for something like that is to blog about the pain. So, for instance, when I was listening to that, I'm learning guitar with my daughter, and I'm completely rubbish. Some weeks I'm better because I practiced beforehand without telling her. If you could talk about how painful it is to learn to play, and blog around that and be funny about it, it's kind of another way in. I don't know, another. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
another, and you can just see what develops from there, because then you might find actually it's a different book that you end up writing that isn't so specialist, and then you come back in front of somebody like Juliet. You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
One book I'm writing is about moving to London, so the nightmare it is, and what to avoid when you're hunting for a flat. So it's called like flat mirrors. So practical points and then nightmares to be avoided with examples of what goes wrong. It's fun.
Okay. How is it structured?
Do's, don'ts, and then little stories.
And how long is it?
So far, not very long. It's about 7 chapters.
Do you have like just a rough word count? Sorry, I have no idea how long your chapters are.
There's about 20,000 words so far.
Okay. Something like that is again quite specialist. What kind of audience would you be? I mean, can you compare it to any other books, or
No.
who would you be kind of hoping would buy it?
New students coming to London or people visiting for the first time, for long stays.
Again, I would say something like that you probably don't need an agent for. It's more a kind of direct publisher thing. You've got to think. I always say to people, you should write the book that you love. But if you're hoping for it to become commercial, you have to think to yourself, okay, which bookshops would stock it? Kind of who would be buying it? What other books would they have bought? This book's similar to mine. Look on the spine. Which publisher published it? That would be my advice when you're writing a project like that.
And maybe something like that, you find a sponsor instead, like you make it a commercial kind of proposition, do you know? Because it's not just about, you know, the very traditional world of publishing, which is why, you know, Juliet's saying these things, like there are other avenues,
Other
books to
routes.
market.
It might be something that, you know, you do with, you know, kind of lastminute.com, you know, well, not them, but, you know, that kind of thing. You do it with a brand and suggest it's a guide that they sponsor.
The lady with bangles.
This one?
A travelogue, as I mentioned earlier, 87,000 words, a young person's experience of India, which documents my journey around the perimeter. Humorous, honest, includes a massive fallout with a 15-year best friend, all the letters that kind of happened with that, some of the stuff. Being banned from like the Taj Mahal, Brompton Pondicherry, but then also Golden Temple, just each of that, are really kind of diverse, just honest.
Narrative memoirs can absolutely work. You have obviously the famous examples like kind of Eat, Pray, Love and things like that, but then recently, you know, Faye bought a book called Navel Gazing, which is about a girl's experiences after having huge weight loss surgery. So publishers do absolutely still look at narrative non-fiction. You just have to be careful that it's not just, you know, your story that's really interesting to you, but what will other readers take away from it? I think that's something you have to consider.
Okay, because I have looked like into the market and I haven't seen anything that is written by a young traveller of India, and it would be kind of aimed at gap year market and more people that want to backpackers experience.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Okay, thank you.
And Julie, we've got this theme of screenwriters through the club, the likes of Ben sat here looking a bit tired actually.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, you're a bit tired. What kind of advice for them? Because I think what they're good at is pace and action, isn't it? But in terms of how you make the move to books, any ideas, any kind of top tips, or is that too much on the spot? What's your struggle, Ben? Come on, tell us.
Come on, Ben, tell us.
It is a very difficult one. I mean, when you were talking to this gentleman in front of me about auctions and could you bluff, I've come from a completely opposite, where agents do lie to studios and say, hey, yeah, I've got this amazing script, so-and-so is about to buy it. Oh, cool, well, we want to buy it. Well, you can't. And then they produce this fake bidding war out of nowhere for this project, that whatever. And it is a completely different world. I'm entering it, so I'm starting. It's exciting, but I'm starting over again. I've been, writing films for about maybe 15 years, and I'm thinking, wow, which has given me the time to write a novel. But yeah, it's very difficult. I came through this with Jack and going to talks and things, and I submitted through to an agent, and the book that I wrote was in present tense. I said, because I was used to that, because everything with the script happened as it was. I thought, oh wow, but it's pacey. Try it. It's a great exercise. Try it. Revise it and do it past tense. It was amazing for me. It was almost therapeutic, because I mean, wow, this is a completely different book now. And I'm pleased that I did it, but I have these two different versions. What do I love the most? And it's like being a painter, you can constantly change things. And I don't know where to go really. Just a bit of guidance. Nobody else has read what I've got, so.
I guess one of the things I would say, there are two things with screenwriters. One is calm down, because you come from the world.
Say that again in Scouse accent.
No, my boss is Scouse, and literally every other word is fucking, like it's properly Scouse. I can't do the accent, sorry. But no, seriously, with screenwriters, because you come from a world where everything is hype and everything is buzz, one of the things that drives me crazy that screenwriters do, I don't think you have done it actually, but lots of them do in their submission, is like, yeah, I've got this studio already interested in the rights, I've got this agent doing that, I've got this agent doing this. But you all do it, and a lot of you lie, and I'm always like, just shut up. It's really, and also, I'm also always quite suspicious when screenwriters do that, because I'm like, well, if you had Steven Spielberg on the phone, why on earth are you submitting to me? Like, this seems very weird to me. My other thing, which is probably more serious advice, is characterization can often be the area that screenwriters fall down on, in my experience.
Yeah.
It can be actually considering what your character's motivations are. Often I find, even with films, I'm like, that wouldn't work on the page, that wouldn't work. I find myself questioning why they've done this. It works in terms of a big filmic experience, but if you're reading, which is slower and more immersive, I think the characters need to be more well-rounded.
Yeah.
That has just been something that I've come across with screenwriters.
So go ahead and act on that.
Yep.
Gentleman in the back.
Hi, just following on from what you were saying, I started by writing a screenplay, and everything was coming out as in narrator's voice. So I started to write a book. So my book's about a little boy who goes to a girls' school, and it's set in Bath in the early 1970s. So historically it's kind of quite a cool time, because it's a kind of slightly schizoid time.
Yeah.
And the effects that going to a girls' school would have on a little boy. And that's it. But I started writing as a screenplay, and it didn't work.
I think that is something that is really interesting, that lots of people try writing something or sit down being like, this is what I am going to write, and then what comes out is actually completely different, or you scrap a project half the way through because you realise it's not working, and then you write something else which absolutely flows, and that sounds like a really interesting idea.
Yeah. Do you quite like the...
Yeah, I think the premise is interesting. I would say Jurassic Park t-shirt. One of my favourite books of all time, FYI. Not as good in the film version. Again, yeah. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, screenwriter.
I've written a comedy. It's a cross between Monkey Island and Only Fools and Horses.
Okay.
Is the Holy Grail buried under the Olympic Stadium? And why are pirates in the East End trying to dig it up? And is Maryland and East London part of America, because it's called Maryland? And can a pub get around the smoking ban by turning itself into an embassy? I see it sort of aimed at people like Jasper Ford, Douglas Adams, people like
Okay, that kind of thing. So kind of comic,
Yeah,
fantasy.
far-fetched fiction.